It's awfully lonely up here, guys. Y'all want to move closer to get, oh no, we have to change the name tags. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the March 16th meeting of Planning and Zoning. Could you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty for all. Thank you very much. And the clerk will read the roll, please.
Chairwoman Spidell.
Yes, ma'am.
Vice Chairman Richardson.
Here.
Secretary Grant. Member Perez.
Here.
Member Rice.
Here.
Member Aton. Member Riley. Alternate Member Faison.
Here.
Alternate Member Childs.
Here.
I think we do have a quorum, although we do have some members missing. Approval of the minutes, please.
I move that we approve the minutes of March the 2nd, 2022.
Are there any corrections or additions? Do I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Rice. Roll call, please.
Member Faison.
Yes.
Member Childs.
Yes.
Member Perez.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Richardson.
Yes.
Member Rice.
Yes.
Chairwoman Spidell.
Yes. Thank you. Can council read any rules of participation in the meeting?
Yes, good evening. Tonight's meeting notice states all persons who anticipate speaking on any public hearing item must fill out an oath card to be heard on that agenda item and sign the oath contained thereon. These cards are located on the table near the entrance to the council chamber or may be obtained from the recording secretary. This meeting will be conducted in accordance to the procedures adopted in Resolution Number 24-1997. Those speaking in favor of the request will be heard first, those opposed will be heard second, and those who wish to make a public comment on the item will speak third. The applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. A representative from either side, for or against, may cross-examine a witness. Anyone who speaks is considered a witness. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents that you desire for the commission to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and will be retained by the city. Please submit such exhibits to the recording secretary. Please be advised that the following board members, Linwood V. Rice and Thomas Perez, are dual members for Planning and Zoning Commission and the Titusville Environmental Commission, and these board members are permissible participants at each of these respective board meetings. This evening's agenda contains 2 legislative items. There is no quasi-judicial items on the agenda, so I will skip that portion.
Thank you so much, council. Staff, would you present new business, please?
Thank you, Chairwoman, and good evening, Commissioners. This first item begins on page 8 of 26, Urban Village Zoning Height Ordinance. On February 8th, 2022, the City Council directed the staff to draft a report highlighting Council's discussion related to amending the height limitations in the Urban Village UV zoning district. Specifically, the Council requested the staff provide options allowing Council to review and make additional changes to a draft text amendment prior to publishing an ordinance. Currently, the code states that buildings greater than 60 feet in the UV zoning require a conditional use permit, or CUP, with 50% of the site to be preserved in a natural state. The attached draft text amendment reflects the Council's discussion points, including the elimination of the 50% preservation rule, the continued requirement for a CUP with shade study, and a list of incentives. In addition, the ordinance clarifies that a minimum of 20% of the ground floor of residential or commercial mixed-use buildings must be utilized as retail space. And if I could, I'd like to point out a couple points. We've got on page 10 at the bottom is a use table. And so in our code, we have a use table for each of the uses, whether it be a retail store or a bakery, and it shows which zoning districts those are permitted in. Our code treats a building over 60 feet in height, but not exceeding 100 feet in height to be a use. And so you'll see in this use table that a building of that height is only permitted in the urban village zoning district with a conditional use permit. That's the C under UV. The properties that are zoned urban village throughout the city, there's an attachment in your agenda star on your laptops if you wanted to see them. It's the Searstown the Searstown property, Titus Landing, and the Kirk property south of 50 on US 1. Additionally, on page 11, I wanted to point to the changes that are being proposed. So that's the strike through and underline text. And so if a building of that height is being proposed, their conditional use permit would require two things. One, a setback, and specifically the language says that for every building over 60 feet, it shall be set back from all property lines a distance equal to the height of the building. So a 65-foot tall building would be set back 65 feet from the property line. And then additionally, there's A, B, and C, which are amenities that must also be included in order to allow this conditional use. And that's the open space, the site amenities, and the incorporation of civic lawn space. And last thing I wanted to point out is that on 2A, which describes the minimum 30% common open space, the code's common open space section currently requires 25% open space for developments in the urban village zoning district. And so by this subsection 2A saying a minimum 30% open space, it's really saying an additional 5% open space than what the code currently requires. So if you were building if you were proposing a building less than 60 feet, you would have to provide 25% open space according to the urban village zoning. Above that, this conditional use permit would require an additional 5% if that was the amenity A, B, or C that you chose to go with. I hope that I've provided some clarity, but obviously I'm here for questions.
Clerk, what cards are there on this item, please?
Rodney Honeycutt.
Mr. Honeycutt? Evening. Yep, yep.
Rodney Honeycutt, 3700 South Washington Avenue in Titusville. This proposed ordinance amendment came up because of the existing Searstown Mall to be called Titusville Resort and Destination. And so as you know, we came through with the master plan some time ago and it was approved, and went through city council and it was approved also. And the heights of two buildings on there, I think it was 90 and 80 feet in height. And it was acknowledged on there that a conditional use permit would be required, though. We knew that. What we weren't aware of is it said if you went above the 60 feet, you had to preserve 50% of the site as a natural preserve, which I don't think we want to preserve 50% of the site as natural preserve. One reason I'm so much in favor of this project is it gets rid of an eyesore. I wouldn't want to have to keep part of it. So that's why we're here, to talk about that. Just to me, there's various reasons this is a good project, and that's why I'm here supporting it. I'm not really the engineer record for this job. The first is this an eyesore? A new project would be a lot better. Secondly, the stormwater from Hopkins and that area goes completely through the site, and there's no treatment. And we're proposing to treat that off-site with a baffle box. And then also, this 21-acre site is almost completely impervious, and there's no stormwater. And so the new project would have stormwater treatment. So I think those things are a big plus, in addition to the fact that there's probably one or two trees on the site, and now it'll be landscaped. And so I think it's a great project. I would ask you to vote in favor of this amendment. It would allow the project to move forward. The project is proposed to be 75 feet, in height, not the 80 or 90. So he has negotiated some to try to bring the height down. And so I'm asking you to support it tonight, and I would appreciate it. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer.
What questions do we have, please? Member Rice.
I have one of Mr. Honeycutt and one of staff, and with the way it's written, you're saying that the buildings you're proposing have been negotiated down to 75 feet, and do they meet the setbacks of 75 feet?
Yes, we have proposed plan that will meet the setbacks and a proposed plan to also have an additional incentive. You have
Okay.
to have an additional
My
incentive.
next question is to staff, because I found the peculiar part of the ordinance was the setbacks, because if I put a 60-foot building, I have 0 setbacks. If I put a 61-foot building, I have a 61-foot setback. And that just struck me as, why? Was that really the intent to do that? Because typically what I see in the code, I'm going to use, some residential, some of the other zoning categories. A lot of them are limited to 35 feet, but some of them are allowed to go up. But for every foot of height above 35 feet, you add 2 foot of setbacks to the setbacks. Why aren't we doing something similar in this situation? Because it just seems odd that at 60, I have 0, at 61, I have 61-foot setback.
That is the cutoff, and I think that the urban village district was designed to be more of an urban style. Not everything needs to be a setback the way that a regional commercial strip center would need to be. And so they wanted to allow the design to be flexible enough to be closer to the street. However, when you start talking about height, we're concerned about shadowing. And so the idea was that taller than 60 feet probably needs to be set back more than just 1 foot, or however you wanted to break out that scale, in order for there to be significant setback to prevent shadowing from the neighboring properties.
There's a pretty big significant change when you go from 60, I have 0, and then 61 feet. That 1 foot of additional height I'm asking for, I have to put in 61-foot setback. I'm struggling with that. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Good spot.
Member Richardson, please.
Yes, I guess I have a question for the two of you. And section 232, it says a shading study. Now, I've been a member for a long time, both off and on. This is the first time I've ever seen a requirement for a shading study. Who would perform such a study?
We actually have a consultant that's performed a shading study. I say we, the client does, the owner.
Just a comment I'll make that if there's a case for what we tried to do in the 80s for performance-based zoning, this is it.
Member Childs, please.
About the shading study, and since you said that, anything over a certain height, that's when we'd be concerned about shading and we have that in here, but why wouldn't the setback then be determined by the shading study? So like, if the shading wasn't that bad or, affecting surrounding buildings, then your setback could be, less. If that was really why we have the setbacks so far in the urban district, but would that make sense for us to, I guess, make it, after a shading study, then determine setback, or does that not make sense?
I think that introduces some uncertainty until the shading study's done, that then the district's not being treated equally. It's very site dependent. I think you could make that recommendation.
I mean, see it as if that's our reason for setbacks in an urban district, then maybe we should, if you're still doing a shading study, then it's all right, okay. I'll think about it.
Just to also point out, the shading study requirement is pre-existing in the code. It
Right.
is not proposed to be changed for this ordinance.
Right. Thank you.
Is it? Yes, sir.
Member Faison.
Once again, staff, how many properties does this zoning category,
3 total.
3 total, and where are they?
The Titus Landing site, Sears Town Mall, and the Kirk property south of 50 and west of US 1. If you open the agenda star, it's the file labeled section 3351.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Member Richardson.
Yes, as I recall, this is the first time I've ever seen a shading study we're just presented. Has there not been one on the other urban villages sites?
None that I'm aware of.
How does this affect the Kirk property?
Well, the property is zoned urban village, and so urban village zoning district would allow buildings of this height with
Okay.
these conditions.
Okay, thank you.
So it's okay if I point, he already has a CUP for 100-foot height on that property. And that property makes more sense for the open space, 50%, because it's not developed and there could be some natural thing.
Right. Any other commissioners have questions, please? Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Mr. Honeycutt. What additional cards do we have on this issue, please?
Jesse Wright.
Mr. Wright?
Okay, well, I'm talking to them, not to you. Good evening. On October 4th, 2021, we had a unanimous approval on a master plan that, as Rodney mentioned, we requested 80 to 90 feet. At the time, we didn't know what the height should be. On October 12th, the city council unanimously passed the project as well. I was very happy, laughing and all that, and celebrating and all that. So I go to my lender in California. I say, I think you guys are going to have to block the funds because we're going to go forward. Then the COP was set for February the 2nd, and also city council for February the 9th. All of a sudden, I hear from the staff that we have to do the shading study. Sometimes I mispronounce the name. And so $7,000 later, we created what you're looking at. The height does not affect any neighbors in terms of shades. It doesn't obscure anyone's view, except you won't be able to see Hopkins from US 1, for example. And then we did that. And someone in the city, and I don't obviously bring it up, found out that this ordinance exists going back to 2005. And the ordinance calls for 50% open space and 50 feet, so on and so forth. The project, as you see, if I can approach the drawing, the ordinance basically calls for about 100% in retail on the first floor. Well, we have one. Oh, sure. So the 100% is in the senior living, which is a 7-story building and about 100 units. But we don't have the 100% in the residential area because, number one, we can't really lease any retail spaces in the residential area, number one. And two, we have retail in the commercial portion, which is about like 20 feet away. So this ordinance basically talks about having the retail in these areas, and this is what was discussed last time. So this first phase, which is basically the residential, 240 and about 100 units of senior living and 25,000 square feet of retail, is being built so that we can move the tenants in the existing property. This is not a vacant land where you can just go out and delay and build whatever you want. We're dealing close to about 25 to 30 tenants that their livelihood is depending on when we're going to be doing certain things. And we've coordinated everything so they can actually move to the retail portion so we can demo the rest of the mall. If I could get another 3 or 4.
Clerk, could you expand that? How much more time do you need,
Let's say
Mr.
another
Wright?
4 minutes.
Thank you.
I move we approve another 4 minutes.
Second.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So in reality, we're building the phase one, which is going to be 240 and 100 units senior living. I'm requesting it 75-25, 75 feet, because we want to stay with a mid-rise, not a high-rise, and 25% open space, which we put in at the beginning. Now here we are going another 5 different sessions after this to go through the CUP, so on and so forth. Now, in the commercial portion, we have retail, medical. So this is why I call this Titusville Resort and Destination. We're working with Hilton, True by Hilton, to put them here, in this section here. You know, when you sit in a plane to go somewhere, the plane has to have certain occupancy in order to cover the bills. If we can't get the height, I cannot get the lender, I cannot have enough income coming in to debt service about $115 million, which I'm not getting any incentive from the city, to be able to cover this. Therefore, I can just leave the Sears building. As much as we put Botox and lipstick on this Sears building, it's just going to look ugly as hell no matter how we do it. So that is what I'm asking for. I'm asking for 75-25, which what we've submitted. I have held up the lender. They've blocked their funds on 12/31 last year, and now we're discussing all these changes and things that are happening. We have made concession. We're going to be putting electrical charges for the cars, and we are going to be not probably putting any parallel parking either on Country Club or on Narvaz. So we're going to make this thing a very beautiful project that the city would be proud of. And I really need your help to be part of it, because I'm not getting a single penny from the city, unlike Titus Landing that got $6.5 million some 5-10 years ago or so. I'm getting zero. Their cost was about $65 million. Phase one is going to run about $115. Phase two is going to be about $35 million for the Hilton. Phase three is going to be another $25 million. We're going to be doing this in phases. We're not kicking any tenants out. We're moving them to where they're supposed to be. And that's it. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
What questions do you have, staff? I see no questions. Excuse me. Mr. Perez.
I'm kind of a latecomer to this. So let me get this right. You have a CUP for 100 feet, but you want to build at 75. Is that correct?
Right.
The
The
agreement.
master plan, Mr. Perez, was submitted based on, as Rodney mentioned, between 80 and 90 feet when it was approved. But of course, we knew we had to go through the CUP process, and we are going to be going through a CUP process. I have to have 75 feet minimum to be able to make this go. So we made one change to be able to take away the parking garage on the first phase. And then we had to go to the commercial portion, this section here, go 2-story instead of 1 to take off these legs. I don't know if everybody can see it. But basically taking out this leg and going 2nd story to maintain almost the same square footage and do away with the parking garage. I do want to have observation deck for all the buildings, because that's why people are coming to look at these rockets. Did I answer your question, sir?
So it's
Thank
a
you.
minimum,
Yes,
minimum 75 we're talking about.
75 is what I need to make this go.
Okay, but you may be going up further.
No, it will stay at 75. I'll make sure I'll be on top of the roof. 1 inch he goes up, I'll kick the general contractor off the roof.
Chairwoman, if I could just clarify.
Yes, staff, please.
So again, this ordinance is legislative, so it's not specific to the Searstown property. However, the Searstown property is what spurred the conversation that led to the ordinance. And according to the GIS, the city's online GIS map, we show conditional use permits, and I don't see a conditional use permit for that property related to height. There are several, about 9 of them total, but they're for specific uses not related to building height. Just wanted to clarify.
Thank you. Member Richardson.
I see you've got a picture of the condo complex that's catty-cornered. I don't recall the name of it. How tall are
Bay
those
Tower,
buildings? Yeah,
Bay
how-
Tower is about 100 feet up. I mean, they have shades all over the
They're
place.
taller than any building on your property would
Correct.
be.
No. This, we're not going to go to 100.
I know, but those buildings are taller than
Yes.
anything that will be
That's
built on
correct.
your property.
It's right across the street, yeah.
Um,
There are 5 other projects that are over 60 feet in the area, and I'm sure you know which one.
I make another just general comment because of the size of the development, and it's almost like it's a living, breathing development plan. Things can't be put in stone all the time, and there's got to be some flexibility. I realize the ordinances don't allow it, but this is a case, again, of performance-based zoning.
I appreciate that. Any other questions?
Any commissioners have additional comments or questions? Seeing none? Thank you, Ms.
I have 3 other people that are going to be coming.
Thank you. What other cards do we have, clerk?
William Castle.
Mr. Castle, please.
William Castle, 3550 South Washington, property manager. I was here back in October when we originally spoke on the project, and we kind of went over, the facelift that it needed. We had a couple tenants that actually came out and spoke on behalf of the project. They kind of gave their side of the story. Nothing's really changed on that end. We've completely rearranged the mall where the tenants are, moved everybody around, condensed them. So that way, once we got the project rolling, we'd be able to kind of move them back out again. So this has been quite a stressful experience for a lot of them, moving into places they didn't necessarily want to be right now, at a speed that they weren't quite ready for. But all of this for them is getting ready for the new projects, having all of those apartments, having all the foot traffic. Right now, people drive by the mall and they see nothing. I mean, it's almost no week has gone by in the last few years where somebody hasn't said, well, that mall's still there. They'd see the Sears is gone and they just assume nothing else is past it. So just getting people in there has been a challenge, to say the least. In fact, even the mall walkers, the people that come in every day that see the property, stop by the office and ask, when is this going to happen? We're excited to see this. We're offering outdoor trails for people, so it's not like they're losing their space where they come to exercise and socialize. They'll be able to walk in the shade, go shopping, eat, get coffee, whatever the case may be. So for us, it's just really important that we get this kind of rolling in the right direction. From a personal standpoint, in my mind, building up is the most logical thing if we're concerned about the environment. The original ordinance seemed to want to preserve that green space, which obviously there is none on that property. We have 1 oak tree and I think 5 palm trees for the entire thing. But Titusville only has so much space. Eventually, you're going to be building up if you want to build at all. I mean, you see it in Orlando with their mixed use where they have retail, restaurants on the bottom and apartments on top. So that's just kind of the direction we're heading with the future. At least I hope so. So that's all I've really got to say on it. So.
Do we have any questions? Thank you so much. Do we have another card on this, please?
Troy Post.
Mr. Post?
I'm Troy Post, and I'm the Executive Director for the North Brevard Economic Development Zone. I'm at 7101 US Highway 1. And we, of course, are an economic development agency. You're probably familiar with some of the things that we've worked on. We have a group of individuals that form our board, and we work for both the city and the northern part of the county to try to develop spaces in the area. And we are actually working with Mr. Wright, have been working with him for now the last couple of years. We're very anxious to try to help anybody who owns property try to redevelop their property. This is a great opportunity, we think, for us to be able to take a sizable piece of property that really, in our estimation, is not generating the best economic use for the city right now. This is an opportunity to take it to really the next level. We received an application from Mr. Wright for assistance from our group to try to see if we can incentivize him to make the maximum investment possible on this property. But we think it is very likely that once he is finished, the amount of money that he will expend on this project will probably be north of $75 million, and that's a substantial amount of capital investment in the area. Of course, we're very interested in jobs and very interested in capital investment, but we're also very interested in, again, redeveloping property that's already been developed. And this is a great opportunity, as I mentioned before. I mean, the entire surface area, as has already been pointed out, is almost completely impervious. We think that that's something that not only impacts the water getting onto the streets, which creates traffic issues, but it does impact the lagoon, and that's a primary concern to us as well. So we would ask that you please honor his request. We do think it's a reasonable request that he's making. We think that it will contribute to a very nice looking project that we can all be proud of. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Does any commissioner have a question of Mr. Post? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Is there another card?
Howard Graham.
Mr. Grant?
Hey, good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I'm Howard Graham. We live at the Rio Vista homes, patio homes that are across from Ace Hardware. I'm on the board of directors there. When we heard that the Sears Mall was going to be torn down and a new mall coming in, we were thrilled. Because honestly, when we moved here to Florida in 2002, we moved from a area up in Virginia that was not the nicest. And we loved Orlando, but it was too big for us. So when we came to Titusville in 2005, we were thrilled to be here, but we also saw the potential that could take place here. Our family has owned shopping centers in the past. We've worked with cities, we've worked with a lot of downtown renewal programs over the years, and we were heard that Mr. Wright was going to, and we saw the photos of what he wanted to do. We actually had a meeting with all the neighbors. We were thrilled about it, and when we heard that it was approved, we've been waiting to see that first wall go down. So we're in support of this. We want to see this development come in. We'd like to see it come in as soon as possible. It's an eyesore, it really is. It's people that come to visit, that's what they see. That's a representation of Titusville. It's not the whole representation, but it's part of it. And to have something new come in like this, it would be a wonderful project to have happen. The other thing is, I'd say is, the gentleman just talked about the water runoff. We had one year that my family and I had to move out for 6 weeks out of our house because of the problems in the lagoon. The smell was so overpowering. The fire chief told us, get out of your house. This will kill you. And so week after week after week, we kept coming back home to see if the odor from the river had dissipated, and it had not. It was 6 weeks. And so with this gentleman putting in water treatments across the street, I am 100% for that. And we support this program. So I'm asking that you vote in favor of this project.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from commissioners? This gentleman?
Yeah, I got a couple
Mr.
of questions
Perez.
for you. Thank you. You had to move out because of the smell, and the fire chief asked you to move out?
Yes. It was at 1 year, and I'm going to get the year wrong, but it was probably about 8 to 10 years ago. There was some type of algae bloom that happened in the river. We heard all kinds of stories about why it happened, what caused it, so on and so forth. The seagrass usually backs up a couple feet there. We live right on the water there. And it usually backs up a couple feet, a couple times a year. And it's there for a couple weeks and then it's gone. This time it was out probably 75, 80 feet that it backed up. And it was so bad, right or wrong, I got out in the river with my sons and we made these big hooks to try to just drag that seagrass away from our house so we could breathe. We were waking up with watering eyes, bloodshot eyes, puffy eyes, having trouble breathing because it smelled like rotten, decaying eggs. It was horrible. And that went on for several weeks. So I called the city, I called the county, I called the state, I called the St. Johns River Authority. I finally got through to a news team down in Miami that actually had some interest in it. Orlando didn't care. Nobody seemed to want to talk about it. But it was a horrible time. So I ended up speaking with the fire chief. And he said, I'm born and raised here. He goes, let me come look at this. And he came down, and when he stood on the seawall, he covered his face up like this. And he said, I've never seen anything like this. He said, you've got to get your family out right now. He said, what you're smelling is methane gas. And he said, it's coming into your house. He said, this will kill you. So we stayed there that night. We didn't get out right away. 6 o'clock in the morning, my wife and I both sat up at the same time, choking. And I said, grab our sons. Boom. We were out in 5 minutes, and we had to go find a hotel. We went to Orlando.
Well, thanks for the clarification. So do you live on the west side of Route 1 or on the east side?
On the east side.
Oh, so it's by the McDonald's area?
Yes, if you're coming north, it's just past the McDonald's. Ace Hardware,
Right?
right across the street from Ace, and the Sears Shopping Center, Tire Kingdom.
Oh, okay.
So
all
right
right.
across there.
All right.
So summarizing your position, you're supporting Mr. Wright's.
100%.
Thank you.
And you said you represent a community in an official capacity?
Yes, I'm on the board of directors there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Any additional comments from commissioners? Any additional speakers? Thank you so much.
Stan Johnston.
Mr. Johnson.
Stan Johnston, and I've been here about 50 years.
Address, please, Mr. Johnston.
Pardon?
Address, please.
What?
Address, your address.
Oh, my address, 860 Poinsettia Avenue.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Like I said, I've been here quite a while. I've got 5 generations in my family, 5 generations in my wife's family here. And parents moved here in 1970, although we've been here in this area vacationing since the beginning in 1952. So I say in Florida. This has been, before we moved here, this has been shown as, or let's say advertised as a low-rise community. And that's featured as a good feature to be low-rise. And it's been promoted as low-rise for many years, and now it's going to be high-rise. So I am for this project, except I'd like it to go with the zoning. So they did it at Titusville Village, and giving more and more height. And this will give height not just to this project, but at least 2 other projects and any more zoning with this urban village. So I'm against more high-rises. And you've heard that before. I even have a poster. This poster has a number of things, which are gates, Titusville gates, like Parish Park paved the beach gate. So this is the first one I wrote down was high-rise needs gates. I don't think we need high-rises in Titusville. I don't think that's really something that is quality of life. We still have a lot of vacant property that hasn't been developed. And to make this into Little Miami, that's what some people are doing because money. Make more money by grouping things together but it's a problem. And I just don't want more height, and that's what we're doing, and I'm against it. And so are other people, but I think I'm the only one here that's going to say that. So I appreciate you listening to me, and I don't think you're going to listen very well on that, but I'd like to have a low-rise community continued. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Do any commissioners have a question? I see none. Thank you. No additional cards on this item, please. Do I have a motion on the urban village zoning height?
I've got some discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson.
Eddie, you sent us a quarter study, parts of it today. I think today, or maybe it was late last night, a quarter study. Was that in relation to this item?
I believe one of the members requested it, thinking that it may have some insights on height because this property is included in the study. But I'm not aware of the specifics, but I wanted to make sure that all the members had an opportunity to see the plan.
I read through it, and as far as I could tell, it was written in 2006. That's 16 years ago. And the economy and everything has changed a lot in 16 years. You know, take, for example, the use of Amazon, how it's changed the notation of regular malls. So I think an urban village is exactly what we need to do. And that quarter study was not exactly accurate in some cases. But I just had that question. I'm ready to make a motion unless there's further discussion.
Any additional comments? Mr. Rice?
Mr. Richards, correct, because I looked through it also and tried to figure out the date of corridor study, and there were some tables in there from 2005, and I think I found one in 2006. It probably was adopted right around 2006. But it is 17 years old if it's 2005. And things have changed a lot. And I just didn't know how often a corridor study needs to be updated. But one of the things, I did look through it for height, see the correlation. There's a couple things I noted was, if you look at the zoning categories, the corridor study said, urban village wasn't even there within the corridor study at all. It wasn't even in any of the tables that I noticed. But the only reference to height throughout the entire document was about 4 different references. And the one that stuck out to me was the Neighborhood Civic Environmental Group, February 14, 2006 focus group. And it's on page quarter study. Blue, it's 135, 131 PDF. What it said, and which we always heard, was that retain height on the west side of US 1. That was really the only reference where the height was supposed to be. And the urban village that this ordinance affects, correct me if I'm wrong, but all of them are on the west side of US 1. None of them are on the east side. So I think it sort of fits exactly with what the corridor study, but it wasn't, the one thing about the corridor study, it didn't really come out and talk a whole lot about height at all on anything. It was just these focus groups had certain things, and that was one. There was a couple focus groups that limit height to 35, but that was in the residential focus groups, in the residential target areas, which I think is currently what we do. So one is, how often do a corridor study like this get done? Does it need to be updated? And, because if we're still using this 17 years later, probably need to update it.
Sure, valid point. The planning department's always looking to update and create new plans, new small area plans, like the South Street small area plan that was done in 2017, I believe. And so a plan of this age typically plans, at least our comprehensive plan is supposed to plan out to 20 years. A small area plan like this is probably due for an update.
Thank you. Mr. Richardson?
Yeah, just have a comment again, and then I'll make a motion. Because of the size of this development, not height, I mean scale, it needs to be a living, breathing application because changes will come. And I would urge the staff and the council seems like they agree with what I'm about to say. It's not held up for any other reason. Because when it first came before us, and there was a couple of us on here, there were some parts of what he proposed that I had a problem with, but they've all been addressed. Mr. Wright has been addressing them all. So I would make a motion. We recommend approval of urban village height ordinance, zoning height ordinance.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Counselor?
I just wanted to let you all know that I looked up the CUP that was mentioned by Mr. Honeycutt at the beginning of the public comment, and it was dated in 2007, October 23rd, and expired in 2013. And as he mentioned, it was for 2 condos up to 100 feet tall. There were 3 conditions of approval regarding the setbacks and landscaping, which I can elaborate on if you're interested. No, that was for the Kirk property, 4710 South Washington Ave, and not for the Searstown property, but for point of reference and clarification.
Thank you, Counsel. Any continued discussion? We have a motion. It's been seconded. Roll call, please.
Vice Chairman Richardson?
Yes.
Member Perez?
Yes.
Member Childs?
Yes.
Member Rice?
Yes.
Member Faison?
Yes.
Chairwoman Spidell?
Yes. I'd like to add to Mr. Wright his patience, his thoroughness in his studies, his deeper pockets, what he's doing for this community. Thank you.
And it'll be next Tuesday in front of City Council? Okay. Good luck.
Thank you for your patience. Action item 9B, comprehensive plan amendment applications, please. Staff?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Item 9B begins on page 14 of 26.
14 of 6?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
The Development Review Procedures Technical Manual requires that applications for land use amendments related to correcting wetland boundaries requires a wetland determination approved by the St. Johns River Water Management District, DEP, or other appropriate regulatory agency. Staff has been advised that informal wetland determinations were a public service by both the St. Johns River Water Management District and DEP. And due to staffing constraints, those agencies are no longer providing those wetland determinations. Formal wetland determinations can be obtained from St. Johns River Water Management District and DEP, although these are generally part of the permitting process required prior to construction. Therefore, staff is proposing that the application requirements be amended to be consistent with the information required for other applications, including site plans and subdivisions. The changes are shown on page 16 of 26. That's the strike through and underline language. And then, so just to clarify, this is making the language consistent with our other application requirements. For better or worse, the comprehensive plan amendment submittal section specifically says from these 2 agencies. And for every other application, it says a wetland survey. So since these agencies are no longer providing these informal wetlands determinations, the code is requiring a submittal that is no longer being provided. And so to make this change consistent with the other applications would make it consistent with what's available from those agencies.
I have a blockage on my screen, so I've got member. So somebody wave their hand, please. Mr. Richardson, is that
I
you,
don't
sir?
know. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I don't remember your exact words. Was this brought up because of the situation we dealt with Wendover Farms, where he had 94 people in this room?
I believe that that was the case that spurred the conversation. The applicant was asked to request this submittal requirement from the regulatory agencies, and we were told that they no longer offer those informal determinations.
So the staff didn't have any contact with St. Johns River before they required it of the applicant? They required it of the applicant without knowing that
Right.
St. John's did not furnish it anymore.
Right, so this was a requirement in the code, and when the applicant went to fulfill that requirement, they were told by the agencies that that's not available.
I'm having a real difficult time wrapping my head around this. Something that's required by a regulatory agency normally. Now, there is no regulatory agency that's providing the service, and we have to somehow determine what's acceptable when it's required.
So this application, or the specific application we're talking about, is for a comprehensive plan amendment. And so this is a planning level application, not a site development permit. So at this stage of the development process, the applicant is not getting a formal wetland determination by the agency. What the agencies used to do when they had the resources and the staff and the time to do so was come out to each site and provide a general idea of where the wetlands are. And unfortunately, those agencies are not providing that informal service anymore. So what our other applications, like our site plan and our subdivision processes require, is a survey that's consistent with Florida Administrative Code, Chapter 62-340, which is part of the underlying language. And so what this would do is require that a survey, still meeting the state standards for what a wetland survey is, but it's not requiring that survey to come specifically from those agencies.
You said something, it used to be an informal relationship, but
So,
it's
like
required based on what I read for the comprehensive plan to be able to, I guess, retain the integrity of that plan, that it needs to have this kind of, I don't want to call it oversight, but regulatory agency involvement. And that's going away.
I think that there may be a level of involvement that has changed from the regulatory agency due to the status of whether or not the project is mitigating and impacting wetlands. And for the example of that we've recently seen, they are not required to mitigate because they are not impacting wetlands, and therefore the agency is not providing that informal determination. In the event where there is mitigation and impacting of wetlands, then the result would be different. But the code that the city has covers both scenarios.
So that's in this particular case. There is no
Yes, where the
impact,
code
so
applies.
therefore they're saying,
Because there's no mitigation or impact to the wetlands of the subject property, the agency is not available to provide an informal determination that they may otherwise provide for a different scenario.
okay, that clarifies a bit more. Thank you.
I need a clarification too. In section B, you have the owner, in the absence of an appropriate regulatory agency, the owner contracts with a qualified wetlands specialist or environmental scientist to allow for a wetland survey that is based upon a delineation utilizing, et cetera. Does that mean the owner chooses someone?
Are you talking about the TEC recommendation?
I am.
I believe that that language indicates a contract is required, but it doesn't implicate the survey or the result of that contract.
So this paragraph that I'm referring to is only from the TEC. Is that correct?
Page are you on?
I'm on the second page of the agenda. I'm not on screen. In the absence of an appropriate regulatory agency, the owner contracts.
That would be the TEC recommendation, which is modified from the proposed ordinance that staff created.
Okay. And what staff has created is paragraph A. Is that correct?
Staff's language is proposed on page
No,
6,
excuse me. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
on page 16 of the agenda packet,
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
the red underline.
Okay. Member Rice.
Yeah, hopefully maybe I can clear up a few things. I think the differentiation is informal versus formal, and they're not doing the informal wetland reviews any longer, and they don't do formal wetland reviews until you submit an application to the district, okay, which is basically under the site plan process. And if you impact the wetlands and stuff, then you get into mitigation, you get all that, and they have to come out and verify the wetland line and do that. So that's when that takes place. This is prior to, this is only talking about a comp plan or rezoning amendment, I believe, with an informal. TEC, we had a lot of discussion at TEC level about who could conduct these surveys, okay? And that's why the recommendation by TEC was the way it was worded, because we wanted someone that had the knowledge and background in environmental science to conduct the wetland survey. And typically that does happen in the due diligence stage of any development. A developer will hire certain, like they hire engineers to do site plans, they hire geotech companies to do the soil borings, they hire a surveyor to survey land and topo. They hire environmental scientists to go out and look at not only just wetlands, but also look at wildlife. So they know before they go into development what they're laying out, what they have on site, what areas do they need to avoid, what areas, you need to protect, what have you, based on the different ordinances, whether it's a local ordinance like the city, St. John's, Army Corps, or what have you. So they have a better understanding in their due diligence stage. So it's the environmental scientist that is a consultant that goes out and does these wetlands. That has never changed. The difference is in the informal that used to happen is once these consultants go out and do that work, St. John's or DEP would come out and bless that line, okay? And then it would be surveyed by a registered land surveyor. So that's the part that they're just not doing until they get an application. I think that hopefully will help clear it up. And TEC's whole thing, and please, Mr. Perez, was that we wanted to make sure that not anyone could just go out and do a wetland line. It had to be someone like an environmental scientist that is educated and does that for a living. That's sort of where we were with our recommendation.
That would have been a great background statement to this whole thing. It would have saved a whole lot of time, you know.
Mr. Richardson, please.
Has the applicant been informed of this?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Do we have cards on this item?
Stan Johnston.
Mr. Johnston?
Okay.
Gotcha.
Stan Johnson, 860 Poinsett Avenue. Thank you to Mr. Perez and Mr. Rice for struggling this in the TEC, and I'm thinking maybe it should go back to the TEC. I don't remember, maybe it was mentioned at the TEC that this was the word informal determination. In fact, I just went ahead and read through the proposed ordinance, and it says nothing about informal. So I want to say is, I don't know what I'm talking about in some ways, and I feel like, oh, maybe this should be tabled because this appears to be a Pandora's box. In other words, what is happening right now is our zoning is determined by wetland delineation. Rezonings are determined by wetland delineation, and now we're talking about an informal, and it's. I'm reading this thing, and it just says nothing about informal, and I ask myself: are we going to have some people that claim to be experts in this, who are cosmetologists or taxi drivers? Someone who wants to expand the zoning of the property or on the comp plan or so forth like that. I have cold feet about this, when staff was talking about checking with St. Johns River Water Management staff, it sounds like they've done something, but what the heck is our comp plan doing, working with some kind of informal, when we're talking about pretty serious stuff, when we're talking about zoning and use of property and wetlands? This is a big deal. So I'm suggesting that maybe even go back to the TEC to see if they can figure it out. But maybe Mr. Perez and Mr. Rice think that, they got a good hold on it. But from what Mr. Perez says, it doesn't sound like there was a good understanding and grasp of how this ordinance is going to be used. I don't see anybody that understands it very well. I certainly don't. Of course, there's a lot of stuff I don't understand. Will anybody agree with that? Yes. God bless you, and I wish you well on making this decision, because this is important. This can be monumental. I mean, because it looks like it can be controlling the zoning, and it may be done by some fly-by-night outfit. I'm serious. This can be big time, multi-million-dollar issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Although I don't agree with the cosmetology reference. The maligning of cosmetologists.
No, I didn't mean to. A cosmetologist shouldn't be doing wetland retention.
Thank you. Okay, I understand. Okay.
So I didn't mean to
My
slight
daughter is
that.
very well skilled.
Did you?
But
Okay.
that's a good point.
Comparison.
Ms. Spindale, that was a very good point you made. Thank you.
I just don't want to malign anybody trying to make a living in this city.
Exactly.
Do I have any further questions? Any comments, staff? I have a comment, and I have a feeling this is an end run around the 97 persons that were present for the Windover. And I hope it isn't. Well, we've had correspondence from Mrs. Klinger, who I think is representing some property owners, informally or formally, I'm not sure. But she has quite a well-written revision of a memo that's clarifying this. And I just, I have some...
She retracted that
well,
later on.
Yeah, but she has some points in the revision. Do all commissioners have a copy of her memo?
It's not
Yes.
in the agenda star.
Okay. Everybody got a copy? Okay.
I got an email.
Okay. Thank you.
And
Mr. Richardson first. Mr. Perez, thank you. Oh, okay. Mr. Perez.
I was just going to say that, I'm going, obviously, like the rest of us, by what we're hearing, okay? And whereas I came into the room rather ambivalent, okay, what I've heard kind of clarified a lot of the issue for me. Certainly, the background statement, or what I'm calling the background statement that Mr. Rice made, sort of put everything in its proper place. Okay, so I don't see the contradiction that I saw before. And the memo that, or the email that we got, I now can put it in its proper place, and I'm not sure they appreciate the fact that, okay, this only becomes an issue when, in fact, there is an issue wherein then the regulatory agency steps in. Otherwise, it's what they're referring to as, or what you refer to as, an informal. Okay, they don't see for them to get involved because there isn't an issue to get involved. That's what I understood.
I see your point. Member Rice, please.
Yeah, just a couple things that, wetlands don't know boundaries. Okay, they don't know zoning categories. They don't know any of those things. Okay, and so you can have something that's zoned, R2, okay, multifamily residential, R2 zoning. Just because it's zoned R2 doesn't mean you don't have wetlands. Okay, doesn't mean that at all. It means you better do your homework and figure out whether you do. And so it has nothing to do with the zoning categories, anything. It has everything to do when you do development. You have to follow the rules with St. John's or DEP, City of Titusville, and submit applications and get these wetland boundaries flagged on a survey so staff can do their work, St. John's can do their work, and St. John's and DEP will come out and bless that line, make sure that the consultant that did the line did it correctly.
Thank you. Does council have a comment?
Yes, there was a reference to a memo prepared by Ms. Klinger that was sent to the board members on February 16th. I believe that was right before the board meeting that last month. There was a memo sent. I only obtained a copy of it after asking one of the board members to send it to me because it was not provided to city staff. And so I received the February 16th version memo, but if there was a revision or correction, I did not receive, the city has not received that. Okay, so the city has not received that, so the city couldn't provide it to you because we didn't get it. And so it is a public record because it was sent to a board member or multiple as a part of official business. So I would ask that any correspondence be provided to me so that I may have a copy. Any of you may send it.
And you're talking about the March 16th, not February 16th?
So if Ms. Klinger has sent something since February 16th, I have not seen it.
Okay. I'll be glad to give you my copies. I never received the February.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you. Member Richardson.
Yes, just a question of Member Perez and Member Rice. So this complies with what PEC recommended, does it?
That's correct.
Okay. So I'd make a motion. We recommend approval of ordinance number 3-2022, comprehensive plan amendment applications.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Discussion, please.
I would wish, as a friendly amendment, I would put in there a recommended DEC.
Member Richardson.
Yeah, I'd make yes to that friendly amendment.
Do you need to restate the entire?
Ordinance, recommend approval of ordinance number 3-2022, comprehensive plan amendment applications as recommended by the TEC.
Thank you. Have I called for a second clarification? Second, please. Member Rice, thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Member Faison?
Yes.
Member Childs?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Richardson?
Yes.
Member Rice?
Yes.
Member Perez?
Yes.
Chairwoman Spidel?
Yes. Thank you. City Council summary of action from March 8th. Any comments? Oh, I did. I'm always missing that. Why am I always missing petitions and requests from the public present?
Stan Johnston.
Mr. Johnston?
Stan Johnson, 860 Poinsett Avenue. Thank you for your consideration. Like I told you, I didn't know a whole lot what I was talking about at that last agenda item because it's confusing to me. But I'm here not just to say fire the city manager, but especially I'm here because in July of last year, Planning and Zoning had SNJ Oaks, a 28 townhouse project, 2.9 acres over there on Elizabeth Avenue, Whispering Hills Road, and it included Mockingbird Lane. And I opposed it very much, and what was said by city staff and by Mrs. Fisher, the engineer of record, was that it has no legal access. And I continue to disagree with that the properties do have legal access. And so what was approved by P&Z and council in July was a sketch plat showing a 10-foot access easement, no public utilities, to two properties at the end of this road, and these properties are zoned multifamily. 10-foot access, no public utilities, approved by P&Z and by council. I can't imagine that because just even a single family lot on a flag stem requires a 25-foot access for the stem. 10 foot. So when they came to the next approval, they approved the 10-foot access with an 8-foot dirt road. This is the multifamily property. This is what P&Z approved. I can't believe it. This is what council approved. Multifamily lots. 10-foot access, 8-foot dirt road. And so the people go to planning and said, well, can I develop my property? Sure. I send emails to the city and I don't get responses. City manager doesn't respond to me. So forth. But here's what I got. It's a continuation of that one. It says here, Mockingbird Lane, no legal access. Mockingbird Lane, fake survey. That survey is fake because the measurements are not correct. The angle measurements. Mockingbird Lane, ML, no street signage. Unbelievable. There's a street sign out there, but nothing identified on the site plan. Mockingbird Lane, tree blocking access gate. And that went through TEC and so forth, and council still hasn't, nobody's responded to that. Martin Luther, denial of two-way access, which they now have. Mockingbird Lane, mistreatment of the disabled elderly gate. I call it gate. Mockingbird Lane, 4-foot deep dry pond gate. 4-foot deep dry pond? I think somebody should ask some questions on this.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I'm asking for more time, 2 minutes.
Member Richardson, please.
I just want to point out that P&Z doesn't approve anything. We recommend approval to council after hearing the staff and the applicant and anybody else that has anything to say. So we only recommend approval. Pointing out things that appeared after the time that we recommended, that should be taken up with council and staff.
Okay, well, thank you. This
Thank you.
P&Z
Thank you.
approved a
Thank you.
10-foot access.
Thank you.
You recommended approval, whatever you want, advisory.
Thank you, sir.
Bad choice.
Are there any other petitions and requests from the public present? Seeing none. City staff.
No report.
What? Let's look at this time. City attorney.
I have nothing, thank you.
You always have something. We appreciate you. Members, any reports? Thank you so much for the alternate members tonight. I'm going to say we're adjourned March 16th. Meeting of, I know, I'm almost within my limits here. The March 16th meeting of Planning and Zoning is officially adjourned. Thank you so much.